Hello and welcome to episode 67, 12 frequently asked questions about PR.
Welcome to the PR Playbook Podcast, the only podcast giving you actionable skills and advice you need to execute a strategic PR program. Warning: what you hear next may lead to brand awareness and increased sales and customer exposure. Now here's your host, Rinjini Joshua.
Hi, welcome to episode 67. Today I thought I'd cover some FAQs since we've been talking a lot about how to prepare for PR and how to choose an agency. Many times, the companies that work with us all have pretty similar questions when it comes to vetting and just trying to get into the dynamics of what PR people actually do. So, I've compiled a little list of questions, common questions that I get asked quite a lot, and I've asked around to some colleagues and got some questions as well as some things I just think you guys should know. So I've enlisted the help of Aaron Reed, our administrator here at the Silver Telegram. Hi, Aaron.
Hello.
So thank you. So we can have a little bit back and forth so I'm not answering myself. Aaron, let's dive into these questions.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm ready. I'm ready. Hit me with the hard stuff.
Well, here comes the first one. What kinds of activities does PR include?
Well, that's a very good question. um, so PR has been evolving quite a bit, and what I think we're moving to is more of an integrated communications approach. So traditional PR typically includes crisis communications, media relations, thought leadership, messaging, and now it kind of goes beyond that. Sorry, investor relations as well. But now it also goes beyond that to include social media strategy and content, to include content marketing strategies, and to even include digital marketing strategies. So PR can actually include all of those things and all of those aspects. It's best used when working in concert with those things. But if you want to talk about straight up public relations, I would say public relations is really the storytelling aspect. So creating the kind of direct messaging of your brand or your products, media relations. You've also got analyst relations, investor relations, and then of course you have content creation. So there's those different areas that PR can include. Our job is to make sure that you're giving your messages out to the right appropriate audiences and the right voice and tone and the way that you want the brand to be perceived. So you could see how that overarches into marketing and social media and stuff like that. But kind of the core is we're kind of the core and it kind of builds out from there.
Excellent. So the next question is always the one that comes right down to the meat of it.
Mhm.
What is the budget that we should be expecting for PR?
That is a difficult question to answer. So you're going to get people charging all kinds of prices, right? And I think if you are a small shop and you need some just quick help or you need some small projects done, a freelancer is going to be the best way to go because they're going to either charge you hourly or charge you for a project. So a good freelancer, I would say costs anywhere from like, I don't know, I would say 50 to $150, depending on the level of experience that you want to capture. And small projects with freelancers can typically start at like 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000. When you start getting up to 4,000 and up, I would say you're going to the small agency. So we're like a more of a boutique size agency. Our agency starts at 5,000 and kind of ranges between the 5 and 12 segment. Now, if you're going to a medium size agency, you're going to get more, so they have more overhead. So the bigger you get, the bigger your budget goes. So that's as far as like agency size. And then you get specific to the kinds of projects that you have. You have to kind of go back and think that a lot of these things are being kind of think about billable hours. That's kind of how we work, but we're doing lots of different dynamic things. We're creating content, we're pitching, all these different things cost a different amount of hours. So I would say we did a holiday gift guide program and it was like $6,500 for, I think, 6 weeks or something like that. And it really just encompassed the entire 6 weeks. We just like went head down in hard pitching like constantly pitching campaigns. And we got some of our clients, we got like 20, 25 pieces of coverage within that time frame. So it's just really heads down pitching and a project work. But when we're talking about launching a new product, you're going to have bigger budget because one, it's going to take longer and you're going to have more activities to do. So I would say for a conservative, this is not even a conservative estimate because I feel like this is like the budget friendly estimate for a solid product launch would be about 25 grand if you're doing everything from messaging to getting it to the media. So that can give you, it's about like, let's say $5,000 a month for, 4 to 5 months. So you could kind of get that idea. Now, the more you add to it, if you're adding social media takes a lot of time and strategy. If you're adding social media, that might be an extra cost. If you're adding digital marketing, that'll be an extra cost. So as you could see, it's a bit dynamic, but I think you could get a solid, like if you are a company who's just looking to raise your profile, and trying to get some good media hits, let's say about 3 to 4 pieces of coverage a month, and you maybe have a press release here and you have some content here, then a $5,000 budget a month should be a really nice, safe space that you can kind of start at.
Excellent. And what can I expect when working with you?
So with us particularly, obviously, I can only speak to the Silver Telegram and Green Seed PR, but what you can expect when you kind of get started is we do weekly check-ins. So we very transparent with our what we're working on, our results. You can expect to actually also input some of your time. And I think you probably heard this on a previous podcast, but you have to be willing to invest some of your time as well as your money because you are the experts at what you do and we are the experts at what we do. And so we have to combine and join forces to really make it work. So I think that's a big thing that some people don't realize or don't expect. They kind of hand over a bunch of materials and say, okay, go. It doesn't work like that. Expect it to be a collaborative environment and a collaborative effort. Yes, we could do a lot of the heavy lifting. We can guide you in the right direction. We are going to do the actual work. Somebody asked me the other day, like, oh, do you just do strategic delivery or do you actually execute the plans? We do both. We obviously create the strategy with you very closely. And then we usually are the ones that execute the plans. We don't expect you to execute. Sometimes when there's like white papers or case studies or some kind of content that has to be expert driven, that will have to come from you. We can help guide you through that process. We can facilitate that process. We can expedite that process, but we do expect to get the expert stuff from the client and then we can execute the rest of the stuff. So you will have to, collaborate with us a bit, but you should expect weekly meetings. You should expect monthly reports, weekly reports. You should expect to get coverage by, I would say, month 2, but I think I'm tapping into a different question. So we'll keep going.
Absolutely. Well, this sounds great. How do we get started then?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked, Aaron. So the way we get started as an agency is probably a very typical agency process, which is why I included this question. Basically, you have a kickoff meeting where you kind of all do a brain dump and you guys give your information as the client. We give our information. We get our information that we need from you as the agency. And it's a really like just a meeting of the minds. Everything gets on the table. What are the goals? What are the announcements that are coming up? What are the materials you have? What are the materials we need to create? So we kind of just get everything dumped out on the table. And then we schedule weekly meetings for us to check in and make sure that we're checking off our list of things that we need to do, creating new tasks, and kind of moving the ball forward towards media coverage, towards thought leadership, towards sales, all those things. So really the kickoff meeting is the culmination of, the project start. And then from there, you start doing the weekly meetings and making sure that you're checking in and, meeting our monthly goals or KPIs if we set them.
Great. So now that I've got you on board and we're working,
Mhm.
what's the difference between a press release and a media alert? I'm kind of confused.
So this is a common question. And honestly, the difference between a press release and a media alert has shifted over the last 15 years. But really, the core of it is a press release is when you have a full fledged feature announcement, like you have something important to say, something that's going to impact the industry, something that's going to make moves and really shake it up. A media alert is typically when you have some kind of update. We also use media alerts for events, and we also use media alerts if we're trying to get broadcast coverage for something. So if we're sending out media information or event or news information to like the news channels, we use a media alert because they're a little bit more traditional in the way they receive that. And it's media alerts are typically shorter. They really go down to brass tacks. It's very like factual. A press release is also very factual, but it also kind of encompasses industry trends and kind of shows you how the news is going to affect the industry as a whole. So it's just a beefier version of something. Typically gets distributed to the newswire. You typically want to pre-pitch it. A media alert usually goes out in an email and is really like slick and quick just to get people some information quickly.
Yeah, I heard you use the term newswire. What does a newswire do, and how do I have to use one?
Well, a newswire, there's tons of newswires out there. Now there's even more than there has ever been. Some of them say they're free. None of them seem to be truly free. So a newswire is a service that takes your press release and basically the media, all the media, so like online media, print, broadcast, radio, whatever is out there, all any kinds of media, they subscribe to newswires and they'll subscribe to the what is it? Like, I guess their vertical or their niche. So if I am a fitness reporter, I will subscribe to fitness news or health news or tech news or anything that applies to fitness or stuff like that. So each reporter they kind of subscribe to their own news feeds. It's like almost like an RSS feed for news. And there's various newswires. PR Newswire is the one that we use the most prominently. There's Business Wire, there's EIN Newswire, there's free press releases, there's Press Release Wire, there's Games Press, which is the video game press wire. So they all sound really similar. But there's PR Web. What else? I can't even name all of them. But basically, what it does is it just kind of sends it out to these feeds, and then that's it. Your press release is just out into feeds. And if someone has subscribed to those feeds, then they may or may not see or read your press release. So the reason that I think you should use one is because it really stamps a milestone that, okay, yes, I'm official. And I think a lot of press still need that like official stamp to say like, oh yes, you actually announced this. It's like the official stamp that you did something or you said something. But it's very important to know that you cannot just rely on a press wire to get your stuff picked up. And yes, you will get picked up in lots of places, but it's really more of an SEO activity and the milestone of activity. Well, if you want to get real press coverage, you have to pitch the media, you have to build relationships, and you really have to do some manual work. It can't be just through the wire.
Great. So it looks like we've got the process in motion. When will I get my first piece of coverage?
That is the age-old question. The question I ask, how quick? Well, this is when, how quickly, same thing. People always ask us, how quickly can I get coverage? And the answer is it's not a definite answer. It really depends on what you have to say and how impactful it is. And if your PR person is a really good storyteller. So this is why the brainstorming portion of your kickoff is really important. You really want your PR person to have all angles of the story so they can brainstorm what angles will play best with which reporters. And usually you will have 3 angles, 3 dimensions to one story and be able to pitch 3 different kinds of reporters for each one. So when you will get your first piece of coverage, depending on when you have your first real piece of news. And it doesn't have to be a press release. It could just be your first real pitch. Like, what is your first real pitch? And the response from that can be almost immediate. Like, yeah, some people can get very lucky, have an amazing pitch that was maybe developed in a week and then sent out, and you might have your first piece of coverage in 2 weeks. Great. But that is an anomaly. It's not the norm. I would say to really get rolling in coverage, it takes about 6 weeks and this is when working with an agency, mind you. So if you're working with an agency, you're getting started, there's a ramp up period. We like to really get to understand your business. We want to know what we're talking about. If someone comes back to us, we don't want to have to run to you for all the answers. We want to be able to respond knowledgeably. So there is a kind of learning curve here. And so once we get that learning curve up, once we get all of our materials developed, once you create a custom targeted media list, we are very diligent with the media list. We like to be really specific about the types of people. So oftentimes we're not even, we use Cision databases and Muck Rack, which are two PR databases that can give you information about reporters. But I could tell you that 100% of my team typically literally goes to websites or is reading magazines to find and make sure that these reporters are relevant. They are still there. They are still covering what it looks like they're covering in Cision or Muck Rack, because people are moving around a lot these days. So it is, it depends on how well you've cultivated your lists and your materials, and then how quickly you have news to determine when you get your first piece of coverage. It is possible to get your first piece of coverage in 2 weeks, but I would say it's more likely, like I would say 4 to 6 weeks, you'll start seeing your coverage roll in if you're, moving along a pretty aggressive timeline.
Great. So I heard you mention the term pitching. I assume that has nothing to do with baseball. What is the process of pitching?
I guess it's kind of like a baseball, because you do have to pitch and someone has to, connect with your with your ball to get it out of the park there, build your story. But a pitch, well, the process that we do, like I mentioned, Newswire doesn't work by itself. So the best thing to do is craft a pitch that has like a couple different dimensions. So that's what we do. And they're different angles typically. And then what we do is we send out the pitch in an email. And we usually want to send it in a direct email. Sometimes it's a little bit of like a group, maybe it's like 20 emails, but we send it out in an email to a very targeted list of reporters. We kind of wait for feedback. So we typically give them about 48 hours to respond. Some people respond very quickly. That's usually the best sign if they respond quickly. And typically, like if they don't respond quickly, you really have to rejigger your email or your email subject line or whatever to try to get a response. But anyways, the first process is sending out the first email. You'll get your first wave of responses, and that's great. And then you can moderate those or facilitate those media requests. But what we typically do after that is do a second wave of emails, kind of responding and giving some new information. So my kind of methodology, I feel like I should trademark or copyright or something this. But my methodology is that every time you follow up, you give them a new piece of information, something that's useful and helpful to build the story, rather than just to follow up and say, hey, did you get my pitch? And you'll see tons of reporters on Twitter, on interviews everywhere saying, please don't follow up to ask if I got your pitch. Yes, I got your pitch. Like every reporter has said that. So what we like to do is when we follow up, we give them another nugget or piece of information that they might need. And I always say you follow up 3 times or until they say no. That's kind of our pitch process for that. So that's kind of it. And then we kind of field the media inquiries as we go from there. Yeah.
Great. As a client, can I preview your pitches before they're sent out?
I love this question when I get it, because I find it's a little micromanaging. I'm not going to lie. It's a little micromanaging. Yeah, we do share. Yes, the answer is yes. We do share our pitches sometimes when someone asks for it. And also if we think it's like technically heavy where we want to make sure that we're saying the right thing, we do have the client review the pitches. But I will tell you this, like I said, we have 2 or 3 versions of this. And the truth is it turns into 5 to 10 versions, because sometimes we're crafting pitches that are very specific to the person that we're sending them to. So the pitch that we typically have the client review is like kind of the base information. And then we build around that base information to give the reporter a more custom email. Now, the other thing is that with this, and I know some agencies probably would not share other pitches. And like I said, we don't always share the pitches because it's really not for you to edit. And I try to say that with all the respect possible of, I know, these brands are your babies, and if there's something wrong, like blatantly wrong with it, I think editing is fine. Like if it's factually incorrect. But this is the problem with giving, we've been doing this a long time. Sometimes my pitches are one sentence. And of course, the client's not going to think that suffices, but you don't know the relationship, or you don't know the type of response that we're trying to elicit from a certain kind of pitch. So I would say, you can ask your agency to look at the pitches, and that's totally fine. And just make sure they're factually correct, but don't try to be a cook in the kitchen, because the likelihood of your agency, like, they probably understand the dynamics of working with the people that they are reaching out to. And so they might be crafting a pitch in a certain way for a certain reason. You can always ask them that, but to explain what we've learned over the last decades of experience is, it might take a long time, and you're kind of wasting time there too. You want to give all the time you can to the pitching and the following up. So yes, I think take a look at the pitches if there's something tactical about them, but don't belabor like verbiage or anything like that, because you may not understand the other nuances that these PR agencies have, and the relationships that they have with media.
I see. So maybe instead of a preview, can I be CC'd on the pitches to the media?
No.
Oh,
No,
oh
no. So that is a question I've been asked many, many times. And again, I think it's just like kind of a sense of having control over like your baby, and totally get that. But what we've seen in the past, when we have done stuff like that, there was a period of time where I would just do whatever the client asked me to. And I've done that, and it gets me in trouble, because what happens is the client interjects, the media gets confused. Who should they talk to? Should they talk to me? Should they talk to the client? Let us control the narrative and the conversation. And then when it's time for us to hand it over to you, where everybody's in a good place, then we can hand it over to you and you can have that conversation. Sometimes the media doesn't want to talk to the client, because the client will say or do more than they have to. They start getting excited about media, and they start overcompensating a bit. So, I think our job as PR people is to give the media the information that they need and access if and when they need it. But we do not CC people. Like, you have to trust your PR agency. So if you don't trust them, don't hire them, first of all. But like, I think you have to trust that they are doing what they're good at, and they have a track record of what they're good at. And so that doesn't typically happen. There are times where I will CC, where there's a certain need for the client to be CC'd, because maybe it's a live interview, maybe it's a podcast, maybe there's some information that needs to be shared between all of the parties. At that point, yes, of course. But until that point is ready, you probably shouldn't be included. Let us do our work, because we don't want you following up and saying, hey, why haven't you answered, or doing something silly like that just out of frustration. Trust me, we deal with this frustration of not hearing back from media all the time. Like, that is our job. Our job is to wait and our job is to get rejected on behalf of the client. And then our job, the fun part is to get accepted on behalf of the client. So you don't want to be a part of that whole process. It's too intense, and it's just too much effort for everyone, I think, involved.
Well, it sounds like you've got a handle on the pitches, but can you guarantee media coverage?
That is, the golden ticket question. Guarantees are very, very hard to do unless you're paying for content. The only guarantee that I think, we have pretty good ideas of what we can accomplish based on our previous work, based on your product, based on your story, based on your company, the name, the industry, what's happening, the trends. We have a pretty good understanding of how much coverage we can get and how interested people would be, but we can't ever. I would never really say guarantee any specific thing. I could say, oh, hey, I can guarantee that we can get 3 to 5 pieces of coverage, but I couldn't tell you where, because the truth is, every editorial department has a different dynamic, and some days there are yes, some days there are no. We're not paying. We're playing with news here. And when you see those things, fake news and stuff like that, that was generated by somebody, probably a publicist. And, doesn't feel great to say that, but it's true. So the truth is that we really have to temper and follow the trends and see where they lie and hope for the best coverage. I mean, we bank a lot on hope and positivity and optimism in PR. So I think we could probably give you a good understanding of what kinds of coverage you're going to get. Guarantees, not so much. If someone says they can guarantee you media coverage, they probably have some kind of paid relationship with somebody, because I think I find it very hard to believe that anyone can guarantee anything unless they're paying for it, or like, someone's in their pocket. Because even the closest media relationships that we have, they are easier to get to. Like, I have some people that I can email and I can just ping them and say, hey, what do you think of this? Do you think you'd be interested? Can you cover this? But they're going to give me an honest answer. I don't want to compromise their integrity as a journalist. So if they tell me, hey, this is not a fit for me, I'm not going to shove it down their throat. Sometimes, they probably would do you a favor every once in a while, but if we want to maintain a positive relationship as an agency, as a PR person, as a journalist, integrity on both sides, integrity from the client side, because they're going to remember you were the client too. Remember, you have to have that integrity too. You don't want to shove stuff down people's throats. So guarantees aren't really a thing, but we can kind of give you a really close idea of how much coverage you can get.
Great. So now that the client's got you hired and you're working on the coverage and the public relations campaign, how would you measure a successful PR campaign?
So this goes back to the kickoff meeting. I love to set some type of goals or KPIs. And if the client doesn't know what kind of goals or KPIs to set, we set them for them. So I am pretty optimistic and I'm pretty aggressive when it comes to our media campaigns. We specialize in getting coverage and media relations and building stories. So what I would say is, depending on your challenges and your goals for sales and as a business, we'll come up with some KPIs and we'll say, okay, look, I think a good place, if you've never done PR before, a good place to start is about 2 to 3 pieces of coverage, and then grow it to 3 to 5, and then go from 5 to 10. Like you want to progress up. And then also typically we start vertically. So we start from the industry publications out to the business and then the general media publications. So a good successful PR campaign, you kind of have to look at in a span of about 6 months. And over that 6 months, you just want to see that your opportunities are growing. Now, if you're talking about direct measurements, you should be able to see inflection points when you get media coverage to your website, to your social media. So social media growth, website traffic, sales. Those are direct measurements that you can make anytime you have an announcement, you have a piece of coverage, you have some mentions on social media. Those are things that you can measure. And then the other thing is, we also sometimes we get so many, like when we do review programs for products, we get so many requests sometimes if the product is very interesting. So we tier that out and we say, okay, this is a tier 1 media, tier 2 media, tier 3 media. And we basically look at their unique monthly visitors, their traffic, their website traffic, to determine who we should send products to first, so that we can determine that, okay, they have 1 million website visitors a month. And, maybe a fraction of those 200,000 is going to see this article. And maybe from there, 20,000 are going to come to our website. So the idea is to get the highest number of UMVs and place our product in those places. So when you get coverage in a publication like Forbes or Mashable or Huffington Post or Yahoo, you're going to see a huge pickup and kick up in your website. Now, that said, you guys, definitely there's so many things that factor into positive PR. I would say that really results into website traffic. The sales funnel will depend on how the people receive your website. So remember, you have to make sure that your website's optimized and it's like good for PR. So your PR team should be able to say, hey, look, your website, like you need to fix it, or your website's great. And as soon as people come to your page, if they're interested, they should buy. Or, hey, there's some things that don't work on your website. And once they land there, we can get them there. But once they land there, this isn't optimized for a sale. So you're going to have to fix it. So your PR team, and you should be open to that feedback, and your PR team should be able to give you that feedback.
That sounds great. I think you should definitely be in contact with the Silver Telegram to get started.
Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate your confidence in the Silver.
Outstanding.
Well, anyways, I hope that thanks for your help, Aaron, on this. And I hope that answers some of basic, common, frequently asked questions that you might have about like working with a PR agency, some common PR tactics that we use, and what you can expect. This is really meant to be kind of a helpful guide. Any PR agency you use should be able to kind of follow these same guidelines. It's really similar. We're all kind of a very similar beast, but obviously we all have our specialties in different industries and niches. So good luck out there. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at ranjini@thesilvertelegram.com. And we'll see you next time.